Hi class and welcome back. This is chapter 8 in this video of Because of Winn-Dixie in our book club. Last chapter was chapter 7 where we learned a little bit about Miss Franny Block's past when she told us the story of the bear in the library. I enjoyed that story quite a lot and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this peculiar friendship between an older librarian and our main character of Opal, and then of course Winn-Dixie. So I hope she's in our book a lot more and we'll learn a little about her. Before we hop into chapter 8, because I don't really know where it's going to take us, I want to go over some of those words that we did talk about and we're in chapter 7. The first word I brought out was a feeling word, and we know the feeling pride. We talked about that before, to feel pride about something and feel proud about your work. That's great when you have a sense of pride and you are proud about what you've done. To be prideful sometimes means we're getting a little bit over exaggerate. We're being a little bit too prideful, which means we're boasting about it. We're talking about it a lot. We're kind of putting it in other people's faces. That's when you're being prideful. So you sometimes have to watch that a little bit. It's great to be proud about your things, and you should be proud. It's why you work for things, to be proud of yourself, and I'm proud of all of you. But you don't want to get prideful, which means you're making other people feel bad about themselves because you're just kind of rubbing it in a little bit. And Miss Franny mentioned she didn't want to sound prideful when she talked about how much money her dad had. She wasn't trying to come off that way. Another word I actually said already was peculiar. Peculiar means kind of weird, a little strange, a little different. And Miss Franny mentioned when she first heard the bear or saw the bear, she was in her book. Her face was in her book and she didn't even look up. She said, yeah, what do you guys want? Looking down here. But then she smelled a peculiar smell. So that peculiar smell made her look up, and then that was that bear. So peculiar kind of means weird, strange, out of the ordinary, when something's peculiar. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is a word that I think we could use in our writing. It's a word for when we think back on something. We're reflecting. I use that word a lot in class, reflect back and think. But Franny, when she said she recalls back to the time with the bear, and she was thinking about all of her friends and the people who were around during that time, and she said, I recall that none of them are really around so much anymore. I'm probably one of the last ones left. So this is a easy word, I think, that we can remember how to spell, and we can add into our own writing to think back on something. Maybe you can recall something in your own stories. So those were our 3 words from this chapter that I thought we could pull out. Make sure that you are paying attention to those vocabulary words. I will be doing a short vocabulary quiz coming up here, I think at the end of chapter 10. So we're at chapter 8, so in next couple of chapters, I thought I'd throw out there that I will be doing a little recap of those vocab we've been learning from these chapters. So make sure you're paying attention to them. But let's get into chapter 8. I want to see where Winn-Dixie and Opal go. I don't really know what's going to happen after chapter 7. Winn-Dixie's bald spots started growing fur, and the fur that he had begun with had started looking shiny and healthy. And he didn't limp anymore. And you could tell that he was proud of looking good. Proud of not looking all stray. I thought what he needed most was a collar and a leash. So I went to Gertrude's Pets, where there were fish and snakes and mice and lizards and gerbils and pet supplies. And I found a real handsome red leather collar and a matching leash. Winn-Dixie was not allowed to come inside the store. There was a big sign on the door that said, "No dogs allowed." So I held the collar and the leash up to the window, and Winn-Dixie, who was standing on the other side of the window, pulled up his lip and showed me his teeth, and sneezed and wagged his tail something furious. So I knew he absolutely loved that leash and collar combination. But it was very expensive. I decided to explain my situation to the man behind the counter. I said, I don't get a big enough allowance to afford something this fancy, but I love this collar and leash, and so does my dog, and I was thinking that maybe you could set me up on an installment plan." "Installment plan?" said the man. "Gertrude!" somebody yelled in a really irritating voice. I looked around. It was a parrot. She was sitting on top of one of the fish tanks, looking right at me. "An installment plan," I said, ignoring the parrot. "You know, where I promise to give you my allowance every week and you give me the leash and the collar now." "I don't think I can do that," said the man. He shook his head. "No, the owner wouldn't. She wouldn't like that." He looked down at the counter. He wouldn't look at me. He had thick black hair and it was slicked back like Elvis Presley. He had a name on his tag, Otis. "Or I could work for you," I said. "I could come in and sweep the floors and dust the shelves and take out the trash. I could do that." I looked around Gertrude's Pets. There was sand and sunflower seed shells and big dust bunnies all over the floor. I could tell that it needed to be swept. Said Otis. He looked down at the counter some more. "Gertrude!" The parrot screamed again. "I'm real trustworthy," I said. "I'm new in town, but my daddy is a preacher. He's the preacher at the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi, so I'm real honest. But the only thing is, Winn-Dixie, my dog, he would have to come inside with me, because if we get separated for too long, he starts to howl something terrible." "Gertrude doesn't like dogs," said Otis. "Is she the owner?" I asked. "Yes. No, he finally looked up. He pointed at the fish tank. "That Gertrude, the parrot. I named her after the owner." "Gertrude's a pretty bird," screamed Gertrude. "She might like Winn-Dixie," I told Otis. "Almost everybody does. Maybe you could come inside and meet her. And if the two of them get along, then I could have a job." "Maybe," Otis mumbled. He looked down at the counter once again. Once I went and opened the door, and Winn-Dixie Winn-Dixie came trotting inside. "Dog!" screamed Gertrude. "I know it," Otis told her. And then Gertrude got real quiet. She sat on the top of the fish tank and cocked her head from one side to the other, looking at Winn-Dixie. And Winn-Dixie stood and stared back at her. He didn't hardly move. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't smile. He didn't sneeze. He just stared at Gertrude, and Gertrude stared at him. And then she spread her wings out real far and flew and landed on top of Winn-Dixie's head. "Dog!" She croaked, sorry. Winn-Dixie started wagging his tail just a tiny bit, and Otis said, "You can start on Monday." "Thank you," I told him. "You won't be sorry." On the way out of Gertrude's Pets, I said to Winn-Dixie, "You are better at making friends than anybody I have ever known. I bet if Mama knew you, she would think you were the best dog ever." Winn-Dixie was smiling up at me, and I was smiling down at him. And so neither one of us was looking where we were going, and we almost bumped right into Sweetie Pie Thomas. She was standing there, sucking on her thumb, staring in the window of Gertrude's Pets. She took her finger out of her mouth and looked at me. Her eyes were all big and round. "Was that bird sitting on that dog's head?" she asked. She had her hair tied up in a ponytail with a pink ribbon. But it wasn't much of a ponytail. It was mostly a ribbon with just a few strands of hair hanging through. "Yes," I told her. "I seen it," she said. She nodded her head and put her knuckle back in her mouth. Then she took it out real quick. "I seen that dog in church, too. He was catching a mouse. I want a dog just like that, but my mama won't let me get a dog. She says if I'm real good, I might get to buy a goldfish or one of them gerbils. That's what she says. Can I pet your dog? Sure, I told her. Sweetie Pie stroked Winn-Dixie's head so long and serious that his eyes drooped half closed and drool started coming out of his mouth. I'm going to be 6 years old in September. I gotta stop sucking my thumb once I'm 6, said Sweetie Pie. I'm having a party. Do you want to come to my party? The theme is pink. Sure, I told her. Can this dog come? She asked. You bet, I told her. And all of a sudden, I felt happy. I had a dog, I had a job, I had Miss Franny Block for a friend, and I had my first invitation to a party in Naomi. It didn't matter that it came from a 5-year-old and that the party wasn't till September. I didn't feel so lonely anymore. All right, chapter 9. Please excuse my voice for Gertrude the bird. I'll have to work on my parrot voice. But we just found out something pretty cool about Opal. She got herself a job at a pet store, which I find pretty interesting, honestly. I would love a job at a pet store. I'd love my job teaching even more, but wouldn't that be cool as a little kid to get a job working at a pet store? I hope that we find out a lot of adventures about her in that. Make sure you rewatch this video. Pay attention to those vocab words, like I mentioned. That quiz will be coming soon, but you know there's a comprehension. There's some comprehension questions about this video today. Go answer those. Come back for chapter 9, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.